Hello everyone, welcome to Mastermind. In this video, let us discuss third part of fundamental rights. As we know, this will be important part in our prelims in case of answering questions related to Indian polity and also in general studies paper 2 in case of mains. So in the previous parts, we have discussed till article 14. In this part, let us start with article 15. Article 15 speaks about prohibition of discrimination. Prohibition of discrimination. So discrimination is prohibited on certain grounds. In case of article 15, we have to remember that these discrimination should not be made by the state. Okay, this you have to keep in mind. That is, the article itself says that the state shall not discriminate any citizens. On what grounds is also important. This is very important actually. On what grounds there should not be any discrimination. So the grounds which is mentioned are religion, race. You just remember this as RR, okay? Religion, race. Next one is civil service preparation. Civil service preparation. You can remember, or civil service prelims like that. That is caste, sex, place of birth. Caste, sex and place of birth. So this is just a shortcut to remember because these words are important. These words are important. That is religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. So there are two crucial words in this particular article. So the first one is only and the second one is discrimination. First one it says it is only, second one it is saying it is related to discrimination. So it means that the word discrimination means that to make an adverse distinction with regard to or to distinguish unfavorably from others. And in the case of only, it means that only on these terms they cannot be discriminated. That means on other grounds there is no prohibition. On other grounds there is no prohibition. That is why I said that these words are important. So an individual cannot be discriminated by the state on the grounds of religion or race or caste or sex or place of birth or any of these which is given. So this is said by article 15. So if you are reading from the constitution directly, this is the explanation which is there in the recommended textbook, correct? Now, if you are reading directly from the constitution, then we have to see that it is mentioned in the part 3 of the constitution. This is very important, part 3 of the constitution. And this comes under right to equality. So, right to equality. In the previous one, that is in the article 14, we saw that there is equality before law which is mentioned. And to understand equality before law, we understood what actually is rule of law also. Okay, rule of law and then procedure established by law, etc. We have seen in the previous part. So in this part, it is related to article 15, which you have seen, article 15. So according to the article, it says that prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth. In that 15 subclause 1, it says that the state shall not discriminate. Now, why are we reading from the constitution? This is very important because most of the times if they are asking the articles directly in the examination, that time we should not get confused. Because in the textbook which is recommended, we will be reading about that particular article in a lot detail format. But they have not mentioned the articles subsections. So in this 15 subclause 1, it says that the state shall not discriminate against any citizens on the grounds of religion, race, sex, place of birth or any of them. Now in this, the second one, that is 15 part 2 subclause 2, it says that no citizen shall on grounds of again religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth or any of them shall be subjected to any kind of disability or liability or restriction or conditions. What are the conditions? Conditions in that 15 subclause 2A says that access to shop. I'll explain this, okay? Access to shops, or there is public restaurants, hotels, etc. And in that B says that the use of wells, tanks, and then there is bathing ghats, roads, places, etc. Now, while we were reading about Article 15, we saw what it says in the first part. That is, there should not be any discrimination from the state. Second one, it is saying that there should not be any discrimination on these bases with respect to disability, liability, or use of access to shop. That is, access to shops, hotels, or restaurants, etc. That is, on the basis of these, which is mentioned in the Article 15, any citizen cannot be denied access to shops or hotels or place of entertainment. That is, they belong to, let's say, so and so race or so and so caste, so that is why they are not allowed to so and so restaurant. That cannot be done. Second one is, there should be having equal, everyone should be having equal access to wells, tanks, bathing ghats, roads, place of public resort which is maintained wholly or partly out of the state or dedicated to the use of general public. In that case also, they should not be discriminated. So these are being said in the articles itself. So we have seen there are two sections in this. There are few more sections. Till 15 subclause 6 there are sections. But before that, we will look at the exceptions first. We will look at the exceptions. I guess till here it is a little clear. So if this is first time of you reading the polity, then you might get a little confused. But you have to remember that it is prohibition against the discrimination by the state itself. And on what grounds? These are the grounds. And that is mentioned in the article. So what if they are discriminated? Correct? What if they are discriminated? Because the fundamental right is saying, the fundamental right itself is saying that they should not be discriminated. Now what if they are discriminated? Then that individual can directly approach the court. Then they can directly approach the court and steps will be taken against the state. Now there are exceptions. That is, not every time this will be liable. There are exceptions. Now for this, on the grounds of discrimination or rule of non-discrimination, there are 4 exceptions. What are those 4 exceptions? We will see. There are 4 exceptions. We will see what are the 4 exceptions. Now the first one you have to remember, women and children. These are the keywords so that it will be easy for us to recall. Okay, these are the keywords. Then there is socially and educationally backward classes, or SCs and STs. Okay, these are the keywords. We will understand what exactly are the exceptions. This is the first, this is second, this is third, and this is fourth. In the third one also, it is advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens. Again, of citizens, or SCs and STs. This is related to education institutions. Fourth one is related to economically weaker sections. This is the latest one, latest exception which has been there. Now, what are the exceptions? In the first one, it is saying that the state is permitted. Okay, here the state is permitted. Everything is related to the state itself in this particular article, because we are reading that with respect to what state can do and what state cannot do. So state cannot discriminate on these grounds, but there are these exceptions. That is, in case if the state wants to be making special provisions for women and children, then it is permitted. In this case, you cannot say that it is against the prohibition of discrimination under the sex category. You cannot tell that, because this is for progress of women and children. In that case, the state can make special provision. So you might have seen in the Public transport also, in case of buses, you can see that the seats are reserved for women. The seats are reserved for women. Okay, or there are a provision of free education for children. And in case if there are any other recruitments, then the amount which the women have to pay also will be less in some context. So that is permitted for the state. So this is an exception. That is, if there is any of the facility, or if the state has made special provisions for women and children, that cannot be questioned. Then in that context you cannot go to court, because it is an exception which is mentioned in the articles itself. Now what is the second one? That is, in this case also the state is permitted to make special provisions for the advancement of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, or for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. For example, in this case, reservation of seats, or fees, or there is a fees concession in public educational institutions. So for that, the state is permitted to make special provisions. At that point of a time, you cannot go to the court saying that it is the violation of fundamental right, because it is a violation under the ground caste. You cannot say that, because it is permitted in order to maintain equality. Because when we started reading about the article itself, it is mentioned in the constitution that it is related to right to equality. So for bringing equality, the state can make special provisions. Next exception, that is, the state is empowered to make special provisions for advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, or for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in case of educational institutions. That is, even if it is private educational institutions, if it is aided or unaided by the state, except the minority institutions. Here the exception is minority institutions. This is very important over here. Now, in other words, what the exception is saying, that in case of advancement of this section of citizens, in case of educational institutions, then the state is permitted to make special provisions. But this permit will not include minority institutions. This permit will not include minority educational institutions. In the future articles, we will be discussing about the minority educational institutions, because that itself is the fundamental rights. Next one is, again, the state is empowered, or the state is permitted. The state is permitted for the advancement of any economically weaker sections of citizens. Now, in this also, the exception is minority institutions. In case of minority institution, the state is not permitted. Now, on this line only, the state has made special provisions of giving reservation of 10% of seats for such sections in admission to educational institutions, if it is private education institution, also if it is aided or unaided, but minority institutions are not included. Now, what are the further reservations or educational related reservations? That also we will look at, but let us quickly glance at what we have discussed till now, so that our basics are clear. First one, it says that there is prohibition of discrimination itself on this ground, that is religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth. On any of these, there cannot be any discrimination made by the state. So that only is saying, that only the article also is saying in the section 2 also of this article 15, in subsection A and B, it is saying that on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth, there should not be any discrimination on the access to shops, hotels or any public places. And in the B, it is saying that wells, tanks, bathing guards, in this also the permit cannot be stopped. But the exceptions we have seen till here, till the 4 exceptions we have seen. Let us look at the articles again. We have discussed till article 15 subsection 2 subsection A, 15 to A. Now it is 15.3. 15.3 says about women and children. 15.3 says about women and children. That is, the state is permitted to make special provisions for women and children. In 15.4, it says that the state shall prevent, nothing in the article shall prevent the state from making special provision for advancement of socially and educationally. You have to remember this word, it is educationally, it is not economically. So socially and educationally backward class of citizens or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. 15 subclause 5 says that nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any special provisions by law for advancement of socially and educationally backward class of citizens or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to make special provisions on the admissions to educational institutions. So there can be special provisions for social and educationally backward classes of citizens or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in case of seats or fee concessions. That is said in the article 15 subclause 4. In 5 it is saying that there can be there is permission to make special provision for socially and educationally backward classes of citizens or scheduled caste and scheduled tribes to make special provisions for their admission to educational institutions. In the 15 subclause 6, it is saying that nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making, subclause 6 again A, you have any special provisions for advancement of economically weaker sections of citizens. Then in the B, it is saying that any special provisions for advancement of any economically weaker sections of citizens other than the classes mentioned in the clause 4 and clause 5. That is, whatever is mentioned in this clause 4 and in clause 5, other than this also, if the state wants, they can make special provisions. So that is mentioned in the clause 4 and clause 5. I think till here at least it is clear that it is saying that there is prohibition and there are exceptions. All these are mentioned in the articles, which is article 15 only. From 1 to 6 we have seen. Let us look at reservation for OBCs in educational institutions now. Now in case of reservation of OBCs in educational institutions, there was 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act of 2005. So in the next part, that is in the fundamental rights part 4, we will be discussing about 93rd Constitutional Amendment Act and 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act. So in next part we will be discussing that. This will also be included in the article 15 only. After that we will be discussing about article 16. So at the end of this e-paper, there are a few multiple choice questions for you to answer. You can attempt those. Thank you. I'll see you soon in the next one.